into their summer at that time. So the difference is kind of with the sunlight. So our days are getting shorter and our evenings are getting to us a lot sooner. And their days are going to be getting longer and a lot more sun that they have. So sometimes in our summer, you'll come here and at like 3:30 in the afternoon, you'll look into our penguins and it's really dark in there. And that's because it's their winter, so their days are very short. And so now when you're coming in, you're going to see the light for a lot longer. So that kind of helps out with our breeding and their molting. So if you're looking at some of our king penguins, it kind of looks like they're having a very bad hair day or bad feather day. And that is because they're going through the molting. So penguins go through a catastrophic molt that they lose all of their feathers and then they get all brand new feathers. And so when they're doing that, penguins have about 70 to 90 feathers in 1 square inch. So when they're getting rid of all these feathers, that's okay. It just kind of sheds off like you can see. But when they have to get the new feathers, it's got to poke through their skin. So 70 to 90 feathers in 1 square inch poking through their skin. So it's not the most pleasant thing for them to go through. So a lot of times at that time, they aren't going to want to eat. That is one of the times that we see that they're not eating, is during that and when they're sitting on their nest, because, well, they're not going to be going hunting for their fish at that time. And so those are a couple of times when we don't worry about if they're not eating the right amount of fish. Here at the zoo, we try to make sure that they at least eat 1 fish a day. And if you noticed earlier, Paul came out and he had 1 bucket that was a silver bucket, and then he had 1 bucket that was a plastic bucket. So those ones with the plastic bucket are the fish that have the vitamins in it. So all of our fish, since we're smack dab in the Midwest, we have to get all of our fish frozen. And so when you freeze fish, it loses a lot of nutrients. And so what we are trying to do is make sure that our penguins get all the nutrients that they can get. So we kind of hide a little vitamin underneath the gills. And as you can see, all of our penguins eat those fish whole. So we give it to them head first so the fins do not get caught in their throat, and they swallow them down. So they do not chew because penguins do not have teeth. They have a spiny tongue and a spiny throat, so it kind of looks like a toothbrush in there, and that kind of catches on to those fish, and then that's how they swallow them down. So when we're feeding them, it looks like sometimes we kind of have to maneuver that head to get into their mouth so that those spiny tongues and can catch onto it to swallow it all the way down. In their natural environment, the fish would be going one way, they'd be going the opposite, and they just open their mouth and that fish would go right on down their throat. But when you're hand feeding them, sometimes we have to go through a few things here. The other thing that we have in here, I talked about the light, is the temperature. So if you're wondering how cold is it in there, actually it's really not that cold. It's about 40 to 45 degrees in there. So on Saturday it's going to be warmer in the penguin habitat than it is outside. But the water is another thing. So the water in there is a lot colder, and it's about 30 degrees in the water. And so they like it nice and cold, but they have all that feathers and that blubber to keep them warm. So if you're looking at some of these fish, you'll see all those little bubbles coming out of them when the penguins are jumping in the water. And what that is that's the trapped air. So they try to get that air trapped underneath those feathers, and that's what kind of keeps them warm too. So when they're jumping out of the water, sometimes you'll see them doing a little shimmy or kind of plucking at their feathers, and they're trying to get that air back underneath those feathers to keep them warm. Another thing that keeps these penguins warm is their thermal regulation. So we're looking at penguins and just saying, oh, it's black and white. Well, that black and white kind of works as a thermal regulation for them. So we have some of the penguins that, all the king penguins kind of, I'm picking on them, it looks like they're all ignoring us. So they have all their backs to us. What they're doing is trying to warm up. So that light is beating down on those black backs, and that's what's absorbing the heat, and so that's warming them up. If you see one that's kind of got their front to you and they kind of got their flippers out, they are trying to cool down. So we have our newest penguin over here, kind of in the middle. She is trying to cool down. She's got her front to us, and that's repelling that sun. So it's cooling her down. The other thing would be her holding out her flippers to get more air underneath them. That black and white also works as a camouflage. So when they're swimming in the water and their predator goes over the top of them and that predator looks down, they're going to think they're seeing the bottom of the ocean because it's all dark. And if the predator goes underneath them and looks up, they're going to think that they're seeing the sunlight and it's all white. So the black and white isn't even good for tuxedos. It works also for our penguins to keep them warm and to keep them camouflaged in their natural habitat. So they're going to keep on going around and feeding these penguins. If you have any questions, Josh is here and I am here. My name is Candace, and we'd like to definitely answer any of those questions. The penguins, they eat fish. And so what we try to do here is follow seafoodwatch.org to make sure that we are not giving the fish and having it overfished in the areas where our penguins live. So we have some pamphlets, they're called seafoodwatch.org, and it kind of tells you if you're a fish eater, what kind of fish is the freshest and where you should be getting your fish to make sure it's not getting overly sourced from.